Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very fun and colorful birthday card for you guys. This is using the Celestial Wishes stamp set which was part of one of Simon's card kits. Now this project is inspired by a dear friend Caly Person who created a very bright and colorful thank you card using this very stamp set. Well, before we take a look at how I created this card project, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the like button and the bell icon so that you don't miss the next time I post. Let us first take a look at the stamp set that I'll be using for our card project today. This is the Celestial Wishes stamp set by Simon Stamp. I love how whimsical and magical these images are. The Celestial theme set includes a very delightful area of solid images. We have a radiant sun, a crescent moon, to a whimsical dragonfly, and a delicate little moth. Now, for my project, I will be using those sparkling stars, magical crystals, and also those beautiful branches accompanied by a happy birthday sentiment. And also, we'll be including a little sub sentiment on our card which says, Hope your day is magical. Well, we will be creating a very bright and colorful card. So, all of the inks that I'll be using today are the Simon Stamp Positively Saturated inks. Not just color, we will also be adding a lot of sparkle on our card. Well, I started by stamping this beautiful sun on an A2 size panel. I will be heat embossing this image. For that, I stamped the image using the Simon's Stamp Clear Embossing ink and embossed it using the Simon's Stamp Fine Gold Embossing Powder. I like to use a coffee filter to hold all of that excess embossing powder which I dust off from the paper. Well, I forgot to mention, before stamping your image using the clear embossing ink, do not forget to use the anti-static powder tool. Now, before I run my heat gun through that beautiful embossed sun, I took another sheet of A2 size panel and stamped the little sparkling stars scattered all over this panel, again using the same embossing ink and using the same embossing powder. Now we can heat set this panel and the sun. My initial plan was to create a card project using just those bright colors and stamped images. Well, but what's December without some die cutting? That's why I stamped this sun separately onto a different panel of cardstock, and we will be die cutting this, and this will be one of the focal points of our card. Now, before die cutting, I wanted to stamp the center of the sun, wherein I used that solid image to stamp the center. I have the yellow and oranges for my sun. I used Terracotta and Zest to ink up the center of the sun. Now, if you notice, I'm not very particular about getting a beautifully stamped image. I wanted those colors to overlap and create a very natural look on my sun. Well, once I was satisfied with the colors, I used the coordinating Celestial Burst wafer die to cut out the image. I love how beautiful this image is. Well, now before we add this image onto the card front, let's stamp the sentiment. I decided to stamp the happy birthday sentiment using some bright pinks. I also wanted my sentiment to have an ombre effect, for which I used two shades of pink. I have rose, which is the lighter shade of pink that will go on the top half of the sentiment, and taffy, which is the darker pink that I used for the bottom half of our sentiment. Now, anytime I'm stamping my sentiment or if I want to align something on my cut front, I like to use my Simon's Stamp Grid Transparency sheet. This measures 5.5 by 4 1/4, and it is perfect for your A2 size card fronts. After stamping the happy birthday sentiment, I decided to use one of those smaller sentiments, or well, a sub sentiment, which says, Hope you have a magical day. Now, this I thought matched perfectly with all of the components on this card front. Once I was done stamping the sentiment, it was now time to stamp all of those mystical magical elements for our card front. I started by stamping both of these leaves and branches on our card front using beautiful shades of green. We have sage, aspen, and field, which are one of my favorite color choices when it comes to inking up leaves for my projects. I stamped them opposite to each other in a very strategic way where I knew that I wanted to place some little mystical crystals that were also included in our stamp set. Now I decided to pop up those little crystals nestled between those leaves. So instead of stamping them directly onto the card front, I decided to stamp them onto a scrap piece of white cardstock. Well, just like I have an ombre effect on my happy birthday sentiment, I decided to add the same ombre effect on the crystals as well, for which I used shades of pink and purple. Now, since I wanted this ombre effect, I decided to mount both of these stamps onto my stamping platform instead of directly stamping these images using small stamp blocks. I started with amethyst, and then to add a touch of pink, I partially inked up the stamps using taffy. I love how beautifully taffy blended with amethyst to give a very realistic crystal look. Well, if you know me, you know that I don't like fussy cutting. I like to have coordinating dies, or I prefer using my brother's Canon cut for any kind of cutting. But these images, they are really easy to cut. So I like to use my fine detail scissor by Simon System. These blades are really sharp, which makes fuzzy cutting a lot more easier. Once all of the elements for my card front were ready, I was trying to see the placement for the sun and those little crystal gems. That's when I realized there's a lot of white on my card where I wanted a very bright and colorful card front. So I decided to add some color on the sun. Now I started with terracotta ink on the rays of the sun, and towards the center I used Zest, which is the same yellow that I used on the inside of the sun. Now to add some extra detail, I also added some of that taffy ink which was left over on my ink blending brush just to add on the edges of the rays. It was definitely a very good idea to ink blend on the sun as it gives a very beautiful pop of color on our card front. Also, the yellow, orange, and pink look absolutely amazing on that gold embossed sun. Now, using some foam tape, I decided to pop up the sun onto the top left corner of our card. Now, this is diagonally opposite to that sentiment, so it gives a very beautiful visual appeal to our card. Next, I went ahead and adhered the little crystals. Initially, I thought I would be using just three crystals, but it looked more like a floral arrangement rather than those beautiful mystical crystals. So I ended up using the fourth one as well. I adhered the two smaller crystals using the Barely Arts glue, and for the bigger ones, I used some tiny foam squares. I absolutely love how all of these elements complement each other. Well, when I said I wanted a card which was very bright and colorful, I really did mean it. Before I went ahead and adhered this onto an A2 size card front, I decided to add some more ink around the edges of the card panel. So I used the leftover ink on my ink blending brushes to lightly blend over the edges of the panel. I used the pink, purple, yellow, and orange brushes to give the slightest hint of color onto this overall white panel. All of that ink blending toned down the stark white panel and made this card a lot more bright and colorful. Now that our card front is ready, I went ahead and assembled this onto a top folding A2 size note card. I used some liquid glue. Well, I did not add any foam tape here because our sun and the crystals already have dimension on them. So I directly adhered it onto the card panel, and here's a look at the finished card. Well, not exactly finished card. I still have some more shine and sparkle to be added. I used my Spectrum Noir glitter brush pen to add some shine on the center of the sun and also on these crystal gems. I absolutely love how this turned out. The shine on the sun and the gem definitely bring out the magical feel to this card. Well, I had so much fun creating this card project. I hope you guys also enjoyed watching this video and would try something similar. All the supplies that I used in today's video will be linked down in the description box below. All of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Don't forget to check out my blog post where I will have clickable links to all of the products that I used in today's video and a detailed description of how I created this card project. Also, check out some other videos where I use this beautiful celestial stamp set to create more fun projects. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.